I'm Corinita with Illexotic, and this is Mental Health Monday. Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we are talking about boundaries. We're going to go over what they are, why they're important, how to set them, and how to recognize and respect the boundaries of others. What are boundaries? Boundaries are the ability for you to know where you end and the other person begins. Boundaries require you to know your values and become acquainted with your values, because your values will dictate where you place your time and energy. When you know your values, you know yourself, and you're better able to recognize where to put your time and energy as a result. It's important to remember that you cannot and should not be everything for everyone. It's just impossible. You're going to let down others, and you're going to let yourself down if you try to stretch yourself too thin. Let's talk about why boundaries are important. Boundaries are important because they improve your relationships. When you're able to openly communicate your wants and your needs, and to tell people what you don't want to do for them, this creates more trust that you're able to openly communicate, and it leads to healthier relationships. It keeps you safe because you aren't finding yourself in a ton of uncomfortable situations. When you set boundaries, enforce those boundaries, and are open with those boundaries, like say you don't drink, and you tell your friends you don't drink, most likely your friends aren't going to invite you out to a bar crawl. And if they do, they might have some sort of alternate for you, like, oh, there's this really great bar that we're all going to, and they have really great non-alcoholic drinks if you're interested. So this is just one example about how communicating your boundaries keeps you safe. When you do set boundaries, like I said, you are defining that line between yourself and the other. This helps you to get to know yourself better. Sometimes when we spend a lot of time around people, we forget what we actually like because we just go along with what others like. Sometimes if our friends are into unhealthy things, or our significant other or family has unhealthy behaviors that we actively engage in with them, then we just think that that's us. I'm difficult, I'm argumentative. But maybe when you take yourself out of that situation and interact in a more healthy environment, you find that that's not you. And so it's important to then set that boundary and remember your own values and set your boundaries around those values. If your friend starts trying to get into a screaming match with you and you recognize that that's something that you just don't want to do, you can always take a step back and excuse yourself and wait until it simmers down. This is an example of how setting boundaries helps you to know yourself better, because you know what your values are and you don't just verbalize them, you take action on them. I think that's another good way of describing boundaries, is that it's taking actions on your values in relation to others. Let's talk about how to set boundaries. Setting boundaries is a reflection of your values. Your time and efforts in a relationship are investments that you make. And just like money, you don't have all the time in the world. You have to budget and know where you want to invest your time, your emotional energy, and more. We only have so much energy and time to share with others. By knowing your values, this is one way that you can begin with setting your boundaries. Another way of how you set your boundaries is just to communicate openly. Even if it's something that's not that serious, like, I do not like watching football. So if all of my friends are having a get-together to watch football, but I've been looking forward to reading my favorite book this weekend, I'm gonna just tell them I'm not really into football, so I'm not gonna hang out this weekend, but maybe next time. It's okay to say no. That's a big part of setting your boundaries, and sometimes it takes a lot of courage. Sometimes you feel boring or like a buzzkill, but that's setting boundaries. The people around you should respect when you set your boundaries. If you encounter a boundary violation with a friend, a coworker, a family member, a significant other, communicate it, and sooner rather than later. The sooner in a relationship that you put your boundaries in place, the easier it's going to be to respect it. If you've known a friend for years and years and years, And maybe every time you guys hang out, you drink. Then one day you decide, I'm not going to drink anymore. That's no longer in line with my values as a person, and it's just not a good investment of my time and for my health and stuff. It's probably going to be pretty difficult to start hanging out with that same friend and say, yeah, I don't drink. And finding alternative activities outside of that, it might be difficult. If you always lend your friend money and then you decide, you're starting to invest your money and build your credit and you just don't have money budgeted for lending to your friend, it's probably going to be more difficult to say no at that point because you've been giving them money all along. That being said, it's not a bad thing to help your friends, but it's important to know at what point you have to set a boundary. Make sure you're not getting taken advantage of. So, we know how important it is for us to set our own boundaries, but it's also really important to respect and recognize the boundaries of others. So let's talk about recognizing and respecting the boundaries of others. One way you can do this is by creating a space for open communication. If you have a friend, they should be able to be open with you without you being upset. If you invite your friend to go have brunch on Saturday at 10 a.m. and they say, oh, sorry, I can't. Every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is when I do my yoga group. It's best to not be upset. You should be able to accept that your friend has other things that they're doing at that time. If every time your friend or significant other or family member says no, you get angry, they're not going to want to be open and truthful with you because yoga isn't a good enough a reason for you. They might start making things up, and that leads to a shaky foundation in your relationships. When you make space for being honest and open with each other, it's much easier to communicate boundaries both ways. Make sure that you check in if something feels off. If you did something and your friend seemed kind of iffy about it, you can always just ask about it. You can say, hey, I noticed you haven't been talking to me lately, and I was wondering if I did something. They may or may not answer truthfully, and it may have nothing to do with you, but you're just internalizing it because maybe something similar has happened to you in a different aspect of your life. So it kind of comes back to the open communication. Make sure that you are able to accept no for an answer. If you ask your friend, oh, hey, do you think you could help me move? Thinking, well, I helped them move last time. And they say, oh, no, I'm really busy. Or, oh, no, my back has been hurting lately. Sorry. Be able to respect that. Sometimes it's hard because a lot of times we get stuck in this mindset that's just about me, and think of everything coming at you in a context of me. That even happens to me sometimes. But people have their own lives going on, so many other relationships and responsibilities to juggle. If you're able to accept a no in an easy and gracious way, it's probably going to make the relationship much better and easier to navigate on both ends. You can be open and honest when it comes to encouraging others to set boundaries. For me, I have recognized a few people in my life who are extremely giving. They are very giving with their time, they are people pleasers, and I can relate a lot. I've done a lot of people pleasing in my life. And sometimes I can just notice from their tone of voice or their hesitancy to say yes that they really don't want to do something that I'm asking them to do. And then I'll stop and I'll check in with them. And I'll say, if you're busy, you don't have to do this. I don't mind. One person that I think about in specific is my partner, Josh, who does Motivation Mondays and makes music with me. But anything I ask for, he basically will say yes. But I try to make sure that he's enthusiastic and I can tell that he wants to do something to help me, because sometimes he's not enthusiastic and I'm like, it's okay to have boundaries. Yeah, just check in with people. If they don't seem enthusiastic and excited to help or do the thing that you're asking, just make sure and encourage them to set boundaries and say it's okay to say no. Because a lot of people have found themselves in relationships and friendships and family relationships where they're not allowed to say no, or else it's seen as being rude or mean. So yeah, recognize your people-pleasing friends and encourage them to set boundaries. It's important. Lastly, make sure to be open about your own boundaries. Lead by example. When you set boundaries and you communicate that you are setting boundaries and why you're setting boundaries, this can encourage others to set boundaries for themselves. Like maybe you're like, I don't want to do this thing because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And maybe your friend is like, well, I did that thing last week and I felt uncomfortable. Then I would say, you can say no next time. That's okay. I'm saying no this time and you are welcome to say no next time. Just by communicating your own boundaries, it can help encourage others to set their own boundaries. And this can even include communicating about boundaries you're setting in other areas of your life, like your work life and your school life and stuff. Just talk about boundaries. We don't talk about them a lot, so it's a pretty important topic. So today we talked about boundaries, what boundaries are, why they're important, how to set boundaries, how to recognize and respect the boundaries of others. I make these videos because I'm trying to start a conversation about mental health topics that I've found useful for me. So if you have an experience with boundary setting that's gone good, gone wrong, share it in the comments. Like and subscribe, and make sure to come back every other week for Mental Health Monday. And on the opposite weeks, we have Motivation Monday with Josh. And every Sunday, we have a Song React Sunday. So keep coming, keep watching, enjoy, do your thing. You're amazing. Love you.